It was an act of domestic terrorism. What happened, it was our ICE officers were out in an enforcement action. They got stuck in the snow because of the adverse weather that is in Minneapolis. They were attempting to push out their vehicle, and a woman attacked them and those surrounding them and attempted to run them over and ram them with her vehicle. An officer of ours acted quickly and defensively shot to protect himself and the people around him.
We have been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety.
They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed.
There is nothing to indicate that this woman was the target of any law enforcement investigation or activity. This woman was in her car, and it appears then blocking the street because of the presence of federal law enforcement, which is obviously something that has been happening not just in Minneapolis, but around the country.
A woman is down. Oh, no.
When the mayor of a major American city watches a federal agent shoot someone and goes on camera to call the government's explanation bullshit and tells them to get the fuck out, you know something went very, very wrong. This morning in Minneapolis, ICE agents shot an American citizen named Renee Nicole Good. She later died at the hospital. The federal government says she tried to run over their agents with her car and calls it domestic terrorism. But Mayor Jacob Frey watched the video, and here's what he said, quote, "Having seen the video myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit," end quote. Stay with me here, because this gets wild. We have federal agents operating in American cities with military-level force, shooting citizens, and then immediately releasing a narrative that local officials who watch the footage say is false. This is about what happens when federal power operates without oversight. And the mayor's visceral reaction tells you everything about what that video shows. Here's what happened. Here's what they're claiming. And here's what the people who actually watch the evidence are saying. At 9:30 this morning, ICE agents shot Renee Nicole Good multiple times through her car window in South Minneapolis. She was 37 years old. She was a U.S. citizen. She was a Minneapolis resident. And according to Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara, she was not the target of any law enforcement investigation. She died hours later at Hennepin County Medical Center. The location matters. Portland Avenue between East 33rd and 34th Streets. That's less than 1 mile from where George Floyd died. The same city. The same pattern about to emerge. Law enforcement shoots someone. Officials claim the victim was threatening them. And then video evidence tells a different story. Now here's where the narrative war starts. Within hours of the shooting, before any investigation, before the video was reviewed, the federal government had their story ready. DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin said, good quote, "weaponized her vehicle, attempting to run over our law enforcement officers in an attempt to kill them," end quote. Not that she drove erratically, not that there was confusion. She weaponized her vehicle and tried to murder federal agents. Then Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem escalated. She called it an act of domestic terrorism. Not just an assault, not just resistance, domestic terrorism. The language matters because it pre-programs the response. If this was terrorism, then the agents were heroes. If Good was a terrorist, then she deserved what happened. And then Trump posted on Truth Social. He called Good a professional agitator who, quote, violently, willfully, and viciously ran over the ICE officer, end quote. Notice the language. Violently, willfully, viciously. 3 adverbs stacked to paint Good as a monster. Also, notice what Trump didn't mention, that the officer wasn't injured, because the officer wasn't run over. But Trump needed you to believe he was. So that's the federal narrative. Good attacked agents with her car. The shooting was self-defense. This was terrorism. And it all happened so fast, so violently, that the agents had no choice. That story went out to millions of people within hours, before anyone independent reviewed what happened, before the investigation even started. But here's what you need to understand. Local officials watched the video, and they're calling bullshit. Mayor Jacob Frey held a press conference this afternoon, and what he said was unprecedented. Quote, "They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bullshit. This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying." End quote. Let me break down why that matters. Mayors don't curse at official press conferences. They especially don't drop F-bombs directed at federal agencies. But Frey didn't stop there. He looked directly into the camera and said, quote, to ICE, "Get the fuck out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here." End quote. You might be wondering, why would Frey stake his entire reputation on this? Why curse on camera? Why risk federal retaliation? Here's why. He watched the video. He's not speculating. He's not guessing. He saw what happened with his own eyes. And what he saw made him angry enough to abandon every political calculation and just tell the truth. When a mayor reacts like that, you know the video is damning. Governor Tim Walz backed him up. Walz called the shooting preventable and unnecessary. Then he sent something stark. Quote, "We have someone dead in their car for no reason whatsoever." End quote. No reason whatsoever. Not a justified use of force. Not a split-second decision in a chaotic situation. No reason. Dead in her car. For nothing. Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara confirmed that Good was not armed. He also said something that should end the debate right there. Quote, "In any professional law enforcement agency in the country, I think they would tell you it's obviously very concerning whenever there's a shooting into a vehicle of someone who's not armed." End quote. Not armed. Not threatening. And yet, federal agents fired multiple rounds through her window. Multiple witnesses were there. They recorded video from different angles. And here's what they say. The car was not moving toward agents when they fired. Read that again. Not moving toward agents. The entire federal narrative relies on Good using her car as a weapon. But witnesses say the car wasn't even moving in their direction. Now here's what this really reveals about how federal power operates when there's no accountability. Federal agents show up in a city with overwhelming force. 2,000 ICE agents deployed to the Twin Cities this week in what local officials describe as one of the largest ICE operations on record. Military-style vehicles, tactical gear, mass arrests. Local officials describe conditions resembling an occupation. And when something goes wrong, when an agent shoots someone, a pattern emerges. The narrative gets released before anyone can contradict it. The language escalates from victim to aggressor to terrorist within hours. The president himself weighs in to blame the person who died. And by the time video evidence emerges, millions of people already believe the official account. But Minneapolis has been here before, less than 1 mile from where Good was shot. George Floyd died under Derek Chauvin's knee. The initial police report said Floyd had a medical incident. It said he resisted. It said officers called an ambulance. That was the story. And then video emerged. 9 minutes and 29 seconds of Chauvin kneeling on Floyd's neck. The narrative collapsed. The truth became undeniable, and rare accountability followed. Here's the question nobody's asking yet. If the video backs up the federal story, why is Frey this angry? If Good really did try to run over agents, if this really was terrorism, if the shooting really was justified, then Frey just destroyed his career for nothing. He cursed on camera. He told a federal agency to get out of his city. He called their official explanation bullshit. If the video proves him wrong, he's done. But he's not worried about that. You can hear it in his voice. You can see it in how he's not hedging, not softening, not leaving himself an escape route. He watched the video. He knows what it shows. And he knows that when it comes out, everyone will see what he saw. So let's talk about why accountability appears unlikely. Even if the video is as damning as Frey suggests, even if it shows federal agents shot an unarmed woman whose car wasn't threatening them, consequences may not follow. Here's why. First, qualified immunity. It's a legal doctrine that protects government officials from civil lawsuits unless they violated clearly established rights. The bar is absurdly high. You need a prior case with almost identical facts for immunity to be pierced. Good's family could sue ICE and the individual agents, but historically, such cases are extremely difficult to win. The doctrine typically shields agents, even when wrongdoing appears clear. Second, who investigates federal agents? The FBI will investigate. But the FBI is a federal agency under the same administration that just called Good a terrorist. The Department of Justice could prosecute, but Trump's DOJ is unlikely to charge agents carrying out Trump's mass deportation operation. Internal affairs within DHS will review it, but DHS Secretary Noem already called this domestic terrorism. Based on historical patterns in similar cases, accountability through federal channels appears unlikely. Minnesota's Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is investigating. Governor Walz could push for state charges, but federal jurisdiction complicates everything. States have limited authority over federal agents. And even if Minnesota wanted to prosecute, Trump's DOJ would likely intervene to block it. Third, Trump has already weighed in. He called Good a professional agitator. He blamed her for violently attacking the officer. When the president prejudges a case like that, it creates enormous pressure on investigators. The message this sends to federal agents is that presidential support will likely be there for aggressive actions. The Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling makes this worse. Trump has immunity for official acts. Ordering this mass ICE operation is an official act. Even if agents are alleged to have committed crimes while carrying out those orders, Trump remains shielded from consequences for deploying them. That dynamic creates incentives throughout the chain of command, where accountability at the top is structurally difficult. Now, let me show you exactly how the federal narrative was designed to control your response. Look at the language they used. Good didn't drive toward agents. She weaponized her vehicle. That's military language. It makes her sound like a combatant. Then Noem called it domestic terrorism. That word does something to your brain. Terrorism means evil. It means the person deserved what happened. By the time you see the video, you've already been primed to interpret everything through that frame. Trump added professional agitator. That implies this is what Good did for a living. Except there's no evidence Good was a protester. Police Chief O'Hara said she wasn't the target of any investigation. She was in her car. But calling her a professional agitator strips away her humanity and makes her death feel inevitable. By the time the video comes out, millions of people will have already decided Good was a terrorist. They'll watch the same footage through the lens the federal government gave them. That's how narrative control works. Get your story out first, make it extreme, and even contradictory evidence won't fully dislodge it. The George Floyd parallel should terrify you. Same city, same neighborhood, Law enforcement shoots someone. Officials claim the victim was threatening. Video emerges showing otherwise. The difference is that Derek Chauvin was a local police officer. Minnesota could prosecute him. The video forced accountability because the system allowed it. But Good was shot by federal agents, Trump's federal agents, protected by qualified immunity and operating under presidential authority. The video won't matter if no one has the power to act on what it shows. Remember, Frey understands this. That's why he's shouting. He can't prosecute federal agents. He has no authority to order them out of Minneapolis. He can't stop this from happening again. All he can do is tell his city that he saw what happened and it was wrong. That's catharsis, not power. It's the scream of someone who knows the truth but can't enforce it. Governor Walz is preparing to deploy the National Guard. Think about what that means. The governor of a state is considering using state military forces in response to federal agents. That's not normal. That's a constitutional crisis brewing. Is he protecting citizens from ICE? Is he preparing to resist federal authority? What happens when state and federal forces clash? Here's what happens next. The video will eventually come out. It might leak from bystanders. It might be released as part of the investigation. And when it does, you'll see what Frey saw. You'll understand why he cursed. You'll know why Walz said, "No reason whatsoever." But based on historical patterns, significant change appears unlikely. The FBI will investigate, and in many similar cases has found such shootings justified. The DOJ will probably decline to prosecute. The agents will likely face no discipline. Good's family will sue, and the case may be dismissed on qualified immunity grounds. And ICE will probably continue operating in Minneapolis and other cities with the same level of force and the same limited accountability. Trump will never admit error. He'll double down. The base will rally around the agents. And the message this sends to federal law enforcement is that presidential support exists for aggressive enforcement. The narrative will be managed, and historical patterns suggest consequences are rare. More cities will be targeted. More agents will be deployed. More people will be shot. And each time, the same pattern will repeat. Federal agents will claim self-defense. Local officials will contradict them. Video evidence will emerge. And the structural barriers to accountability will remain. Minneapolis is traumatized. The city buried George Floyd after promising reform. Community leaders said never again. And now federal agents show up, shoot someone in almost the exact same area, and immediately release an account that contradicts witness testimony. The community knows Good's death won't result in charges. They know the video won't matter in terms of prosecution. They've seen this before. So here's what you need to understand. This isn't about one shooting. This is about what happens when federal power operates without checks. When agents know they're likely protected regardless of their actions. When the narrative gets released before independent review. When qualified immunity makes civil justice nearly impossible, and presidential authority shields decision makers at the top. Renee Nicole Good was 37 years old. She was a U.S. citizen. She wasn't the target of any investigation. She was in her car in South Minneapolis. Federal agents surrounded her. They shot her multiple times through her window. She was transported to the hospital where she later died. And the president called her a terrorist before anyone reviewed what happened. Mayor Frey watched the video and called the federal explanation bullshit. Governor Walz said she died for no reason whatsoever. Police Chief O'Hara confirmed she wasn't armed. Witnesses say her car wasn't moving toward agents. And when the video comes out, you'll see why Frey was angry enough to tell ICE to get the fuck out of Minneapolis. But you'll also see why that anger doesn't translate to accountability, why the truth doesn't guarantee justice, why the video doesn't ensure consequences, because accountability only exists when institutions with power choose to enforce it. And the institutions that could hold these agents responsible are controlled by the administration that deployed them. That's the real story. Federal agents shot an American citizen and immediately released an account that local officials who watched the video say is false. Local officials who reviewed the evidence are telling you the federal narrative doesn't match what happened. And based on structural barriers to federal accountability, consequences appear unlikely. Because this is what mass deportation looks like. This is what happens when you deploy 2,000 agents to one city with military equipment and tell them to round people up. Someone gets shot. Officials release their version, and the operation continues. Frey's profanity wasn't a loss of control. It was the only honest response to watching federal power result in someone's death, and knowing accountability through federal channels appears unlikely. When a mayor says, "Get the fuck out," listen. He's telling you something the federal government doesn't want you to know. He's telling you what's on that video. And he's telling you that what comes next is worse. Thanks for spending a few minutes digging into this with me. If you want more grounded, progressive commentary without the outrage bait, subscribe and stick around. Every time you watch, share, and engage, it helps build a community that believes democracy is worth understanding and defending. I'll see you in the next video.